Hello, kiddies! Welcome to the Cryptique Podcast. My name's Kenny. I'm here with my good friend Godden, and together we're here to watch and review every horrific, terrifying, sometimes hilarious episode of the legendary HBO anthology series, Tales from the Crypt. I'm just trying to mix it up every once in a while with the intro, you know? Practicing my voices, you know, having a little fun with it.
I didn't say anything. I enjoyed it.
All right. So here we are, boils and ghouls, talking about season 2, episode 2, The Switch. It aired April 21st, 1990, which is the same night as last week's episode that we talked about. So these two episodes aired together, along with one more after this one. And this comes at us from the comic Tales from the Crypt. So an actual legit comic Tales from the Crypt, which is pretty cool.
I see.
Yeah. And we already mentioned it. I let the cat out the bag last week that this episode is directed by and has a cameo by the one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger. So very, very cool episode. I always look forward to watching this one just because, you know, I like the cameo in the beginning, and the episode as a whole, I think, is a lot of fun as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, spoiler warning, we're not here to just, you know, be quick about the episode. We're going to go in depth. So if you haven't seen this episode yet, I recommend watching it first before you listen to us. And, you know, if you watch the episode relatively soon in relation to us talking about it, I think it's more fun for you as well, because then, you know, there's maybe scenes that you might recognize more closely if you had just seen the episode. So go watch the episode and come back and listen to us, you know, go on about it. All right. So according to the ancient texts inked in blood on the back of this DVD box set, it says, okay, there is a typo in this one.
Really?
I think it's supposed to say to woo a lovely femme. And the box set, it says to woo, T-O-O, woo a lovely femme. I think it's just supposed to say to woo a lovely femme. A wealthy codger trades bods with a hunk. But there's a switch to the switch. Uh-oh.
Just switch to the switch.
There's a switch to the switch. I like that.
It's probably Arnold who wrote it, you know? English is a second language, so... he didn't mean to put two like that.
Mm-hmm. Just quick thoughts. I did like this episode. It is one that I look forward to watching. And, I'm not going to beat around the bush about this. I'm a big Schwarzenegger fan. Okay. I got all his movies. I do all that kind of, you know, typical, Schwarzenegger fan, big fan of Terminator and Commando and, you know, Total Recall and all of his, you know, dumb action movies. I love them all. So sometimes it's hard to disassociate the two. Sometimes it's hard to, you know, am I more of a fan of the fact that Schwarzenegger directed this episode, or is the episode just good as its own? I think it's a good episode. I honestly do think it's a good episode. It's not just the Schwarzenegger thing. I think the Schwarzenegger thing is like a lot of fun on top of everything else. But the fact that he's not in the episode makes it easier to, you know, see the episode as itself rather than, you know, being a big Schwarzenegger thing. Because there is a character, a big, muscly, handsome character who very well could have been just Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? They could have just used Arnold, but they used, you know, a different character. So I think Arnold did make like a deliberate decision to keep himself out of the episode, because he could have just put himself in it for fun. It would have been fun for him. Any tip of the iceberg stuff you wanted to share before we got into the episode?
When you said Arnold didn't add himself into the episode while as a director, it made me think of another episode who added themselves into the episode, and they're also the director of the episode.
I think I know who you're talking about. Can I say it?
But I don't want to mention it. If you want to, yeah. I wasn't.
Are you talking about the Tom Hanks episode?
Who? Yeah.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. Well, is it in this season? Is that in this season?
I hope so. I really hope so.
I wouldn't remember the title of the episode. Yeah, I don't know if it's in this season. I'm just looking at the pictures that the season has on it. I don't know. It might not be this season, but yeah, there's a Tom Hanks episode where he's actually in it. Although in that episode, Tom Hanks does have himself killed, his character.
Spoilers, Kenny. We're not even that far.
My gosh.
It could be season 4.
Oh my gosh. Okay. We're going to forget this happened by the time we finally get to that episode. We're going to be just fine. Trust me. Okay. So this episode starts off with the Crypt Keeper, and he is working out. He's lifting up the barbell, doing barbell curls, and he is struggling. He's struggling to lift these up. He says, it's disgusting what people will do to stay young. And he's not enjoying his workout. And that's when we get our cameo. In comes Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's not happy. He is not happy with the Crypt Keeper's dedication to this workout. He says, what's the matter with you? Do you want to keep that 90-pound corpse for the rest of your death? Keep pumping.
Is that your Arnold imitation?
What's the matter with you? Do you want to keep the 90-pound corpse for the rest of your death? Keep pumping.
That's pretty good.
And that is we found it. That's my shriek of the week. That's it right there. Thank you, Arnold. So my shriek of the week doesn't even belong to the Crypt Keeper. So he scolds the Crypt Keeper for not working out hard enough, and he says, keep pumping while I tell the story. Tonight's story is about an old man who finds a new wrinkle in the fountain of youth, a twisted tale we call The Switch. That's my Schwarzenegger. That's the best I can do.
I can see it too. I can hear it, yeah. It's him.
So it's Arnold who's telling the story this time, which is fitting because he's actually directing the episode. So I thought that was fitting. This is also interesting because, like, I don't think an episode like this could have happened in season 1, because in season 1 the Crypt Keeper was the man in charge. Like it was his lair. Like he wasn't willing to let somebody else take the limelight, or he wasn't willing to be degraded. But by season 2, he's livening up a bit. He's having a little bit more fun, and I think he's more willing to have Schwarzenegger come in and kind of take over the show. So it's unusual. But I think it's also paving the way for future seasons, which of course has the Crypt Keeper being a lot more just silly, bombastic type character. All right, well, let's talk about the opening panel to the episode before we dig into it. Opening panel shows a very, very old man staring into a mirror, and his reflection is a very, very young, very, very physically fit, very handsome man. And in between is a gorgeous woman who her body is facing the old man, but she's looking behind her. She's looking at the reflection of the old man. So her body is facing, right, the reality, the real man there. But of course her eye, right, what she wants to look at is that gorgeous man in the reflection. So, and in the background you see there's like a tank of a bunch of floating heads, right? You see those?
Oh yeah, I do. Yes.
Those might come into play later on. We don't know yet.
You don't know.
I don't want to spoil anything, I'm not one to spoil things.
That's true. You're not one to do that.
All right. So this episode opens up with there's an over-the-shoulder shot. There's a man sitting in a very, very large, comfy leather chair, and he's sitting in front of a fireplace. And it's a very, very fancy room that he's sitting in. Very, very high-end fancy room. And the camera pans around, and you get to see that there's other fancy leather chairs, very intricate decor on a lot of the furniture. There's a giant grandfather clock. Very, very old-timey, but very ritzy, upscale room. The wallpaper is also, like very fine with its, intricate details on that as well. So very wealthy room that we're in. And the camera comes back around towards that chair where the man was sitting, and it zooms into a picture of a gorgeous woman that's right beside the man. And at that moment, the butler walks in. The butler walks in and he seems very concerned. He says, "Have you been here all night, sir? You're liable to catch your death of cold." And that's where the old man, Carlton is his name, by the way. Carlton is sitting there. He's a very, very old man. How old do you think he's supposed to be in this episode?
Late. I'd say like mid-80s, actually.
Yeah, that's what I was getting the impression of. I don't know if the actor was that old, but I think he was supposed to be, in his very, very old, very, past the, definitely, I think older than his typical life expectancy of a human being. Like late 80s, maybe even 90s kind of age. This isn't like a 60-year-old old man. This is like a very genuinely old man. So he's sitting there in his chair, and he starts laughing. He starts laughing and he says, "I'm in love, Fulton. I'm in love. Fulton, by the way, is the butler. Is it a butler? Butler, right? He's not like a maid or anything.
No, he's or
like a caretaker.
Maid. The difference is just like the person. But yeah, no, I think butlers. Yeah, like
he's also like a chauffeur, right? I mean, he drives him around. This Fulton guy basically he takes care of the house. He's like a housekeeper, maybe even a groundskeeper. He probably takes care of outside as well. He takes care of the old man. He's like a like an in-home nurse or whatever. But he's also like a chauffeur. He drives him around. He's basically like his whatever he needs to have done, like his servant or something like that.
I mean, Alfred was a butler. He did all that, so I think butler just fits.
And I'm just gonna go right out and say this is my favorite character. I like Fulton. I like Fulton because he works for Carlton, but throughout the episode, he really cares about this man. Like he might be the only person who cares about Carlton. Everybody else just either takes him for granted or just dismisses him altogether. Fulton is really the only person who really is looking out for Carlton. So I do like this character, and I really enjoyed the small moments that he had with him. Oh, in fact, like as soon as he walks in, he's worried about Carlton. Have you been up all night? You're going to catch your death of cold. He's really worried about him. So he says, I'm in love. And Fulton says, have you taken your meds? He says, no, Fulton, it's true. I'm madly, desperately in love. She's cultured, sophisticated, and what's best, she's young. So already we're starting to hammer home the overall theme of this episode of staying young, staying beautiful. Mm-hmm. And while he's saying this, by the way, he's holding that picture that was beside him. So this is the woman who caught his eye. So Fulton comes at it with reason. He's like, wait a minute, are you sure that she's interested in you, or does she just want your money? And Carlton says, no, she has no idea about my wealth, and I have no intentions of telling her. So Carlton definitely wants this woman, but he does not want her to want him for his money. She wants her to want him for him. So that's important to Carlton. And we have kind of a fun little moment between Carlton and Fulton here. Carlton insists that his new love, Linda, is going to breathe new life into his house. And the two of them get up and they start opening all of the curtains, letting sun pour into the room, lighting it up. And we have some fun, very dreamy, upbeat music playing while this is happening. So this is a very, very happy moment, which is like it's like love, right? When you're in love, you feel so floaty and you're just very dreamy, and they captured that moment very, very well. And Fulton was willing to share that moment with him, knowing that she's going to love him for not his money but for him. So that's kind of the expectation that the episode has so far. Do you think it's going to go well for him?
So far, he's very enthusiastic with the whole thing. Like the whole way is like, I'm in love. He's just like dancing around like the room. That was really funny.
Yeah, I believe old man.
He deserves it. Yeah.
Typically has a walking cane as he walks around, is able to dance around his sitting room because he's in love.
Yeah, it's the power of love, There you go.
So this next scene, we actually get to meet Linda. We have Carlton being driven to Linda's apartment. And at this point, Carlton is dressed in very drab clothes. Like before, he was in a nice sharp suit and very well dressed, very wealthy, well-to-do type dress. At this point, he's dressed in he's still wearing a suit, but it's very drab and very, very common folk dress. He's dressed like this because he doesn't want Linda to know how rich he is. So he walks up and he gives her flowers. And Linda says, oh, they're as beautiful as all the other flowers you brought me. So this is a regular thing, right? He's constantly bringing her flowers and giving her gifts, and she appreciates them. I think she likes the attention from Carlton. I think the two of them at this point in the episode, they are more or less friends, right? She lets him into his house. She seems to greet him warmly. She seems to appreciate his company, and she definitely appreciates his gifts, right? At this point, I feel like it's a very, very friendly relationship.
Yeah, I was getting the same idea too.
So at this point, Carlton says to her, I don't have much money, but I'd gladly share everything I had if you'd marry me. And Linda at this point admits, Carlton, I can't. You're so sweet to me, and I appreciate that. But when I look at your face, I know I can't marry you. You're just so old enough to be my grandfather. And that last little line right there, old enough to be my grandfather, at that point right there, I felt like it wasn't vanity speaking. It was legit like, he's just too old, right?
Just too uncomfortable for her, yeah.
Right. It's just, so it just would be very, very uncomfortable, which I can totally relate with. So I feel like she is a genuine woman who does care for this old man who likes him, but just can't see a relationship with him being anything that she'd be willing to do. At this point, I can appreciate Linda. That will change. I'm gonna go out and say it right now. That will eventually change. But at this point right now, I feel like Linda is a decent woman, right? So Carlton says, I'll do anything to make you happy. Anything. And he leaves, and on the car ride home, he's in the back seat and he's looking into a mirror, and he's actually pulling back the skin on his face to take away his wrinkles to try and make himself look younger. So, right, that moment kind of plants the seeds for the rest of the episode. He's got to look younger in order to attract the love of his life, Linda. Which brings us to the next scene in the plastic surgeon's office. So he's going for it. He's going to see a plastic surgeon for surgery to make himself look younger. And I like while he's in the waiting room, by the way, he's kind of flipping through the pages in the magazine to kind of look for a face that he likes. Mm-hmm. And while he's doing that, the women next to him, they're like probably like in their 50s or so, or maybe 60s. Women are next to him, and then the ladies say, they say Dr. Thorne is such a miracle worker. He could take as much as 5 to 10 years off our appearances. Wouldn't that solve all of our problems? And the look on Carlton's face here says it all, I think. This guy is like 80, 90, right? He's up there in years, and he's thinking to himself, like, what is 5 to 10 years going to do for me, right? Yeah. Instead of 90, I'm going to look 80. Gee, thanks.
Yeah, it was actually a good little bit. It's like, yep. He needs to go even further than that.
Right.
He's hoping for a full miracle. Yeah.
That was good. Yeah. So when we finally get to Dr. Thorne's office, this doctor's name is Dr. Thorne. He's basically going through all the different possible procedures. He's telling them, facelifts, eye tucks, chin implants, vitamin shots, and hormones. He says, using these techniques, I can make you look 20 years younger. And Carlton says, that's not enough. I want to look like I'm 30. Dr. Thorne says, that's impossible. At your advanced age, there's only so much that can be done. And Carlton presses him. He says, I hear there's someone who can do it. And at that point, Dr. Thorne stands up and he turns his back to Carlton. And then he turns back around slowly, like to be like super dramatic about it, right? And I like this part too. Suddenly the doctor's voice drops like 3 octaves. And he says, you understand, a referral like this doesn't come cheap. I like that whole moment right there. That whole he was sitting talking to him casually. Suddenly he stands up and turns around, and then he turns around slowly and he drops his voice and all that kind of stuff. It's so dramatic. I loved it. And Carlton says, life is cheap, but youth is very, very precious. So Carlton is in. He's willing to pay whatever he's got to pay. Ooh, anything about this doctor's visit that you wanted to add into?
I like the other doctor more who comes in.
Yeah. Well, let's get to that, shall we? Now, before I go on with this, though, was there a name for this doctor? Did you catch that?
Dr. Thorne or the new one that we're about to meet?
Dr. Thorne is the plastic surgeon, but this new doctor he goes to see that we're about to talk about, because he's constantly referred to in my notes as the surgeon, and I just don't know his name, though. I tried to find his name.
I think I only remember his assistant being named, but not the doctor.
Yeah, I couldn't find a name for him, so I would just refer to him as the surgeon. So anyway, the surgeon, they go to the surgeon's house in this next scene, and of course it's a dark and stormy night. Of course it's raining, and there's lightning and thunder. Of course all that's happening, right? The most dramatic you can possibly get. So they drive up to this old mansion on a dark and stormy night. There's flashes of lightning, and one of the flashes of lightning reveals the surgeon up in the window staring down at them as they arrive. And he's staring down very maniacally, like he's up to something. Like he's got a look on his face like, oh yes, here they are. Like he's been expecting them almost. So Carlton approaches the door, and here's another scene with Fulton. I think Fulton is very, very concerned about the well-being of Carlton. He says, are you sure you're going to be all right, sir? Let me help you to the door. He's also holding the umbrella over Carlton so he doesn't get wet. He's helping him up the stairs. He insists that he goes in with him, but Carlton's like, no, you stay out here. So I feel like this is another scene where Fulton is genuinely concerned with Carlton. Very, very touching dialogue between the two, I felt. He was very, very concerned for his friend. Or at least he seemed like he was his friend. Anyway, Carlton sends away Fulton. Fulton goes back to the car. Carlton knocks on the door, and it's answered by a very, like, Igor-looking man, right? He's got, like, a hunchback. He's got a bandage over his head. There's, like, blood on the bandage. He's very, very strange-looking man. And he waves to him with his whole hand, not just his finger, but his whole hand. He waves to him, and he says, "Come." And that was the entire scene with that man.
Yeah.
The moment he answered the door, just the way this guy looked with his hunchback, with his bandage over his face, the way he said, "Come." Like, this man demanded more screen presence, but that's all they gave him. That was it. I love how
that's always a stereotype.
I love how, yeah, there's just this crazy looking person, and that's it. Like, he doesn't answer the door anymore. He's never in any other scenes. That was it. That was his moment. I wanted more of that guy. So when he's finally in the, I don't know, is it the operation room or the waiting room or something? When he's finally in the, it's a giant room, right? And this is where he consults with the surgeon. This is where all the operations happen. This is where all the, right? It's a giant like laboratory of a room. So it's all in one room. So in this room, they're talking to each other, and the surgeon says, yeah, I could give you the face that you want. I can make your face look like somebody who's 30. Okay. But it's going to cost you $1 million. And Carlton's shocked at the price. And the surgeon tells him, well, the procedure is only $100,000. The other $900,000 comes from the young man's face. He says, do you think faces grow on trees? They come from living, breathing human beings. And when he says this, he's standing in front of this giant tank filled with some unknown liquid, but suspended in this tank are like a bunch of heads. He's like, has a collection of heads. So you would expect that they'd be using one of those heads behind him, but they're not. They're not using one of those heads behind him. The surgeon says, this is Hans. And in comes a very, very handsome, fit, muscular man. He's got like a chiseled jaw. He's got a great hairline. He's very, very leading man look, right? Very great, very good physique, all the above. And this is the character I was talking about that could have been Arnold Schwarzenegger. It would have been really easy for Arnold to just put himself in as this character, but he didn't. He gave it to whatever the actor is who plays Hans. Something else about Hans is I like he doesn't act very much, but his acting he does do, I think, is great. This Hans character.
Yeah.
He just looks dumb as a stump. He doesn't talk too much. He's constantly staring like blankly into space. And he doesn't have much dialogue other than just repeating what other people tell him. Right? He just like, that's his dialogue. He just repeats what people say to him. He's just so stupid. So the plan is to switch their heads. So Carlton's like, wait, I'm not going to get his brains though, am I? He says, no. You keep your brains, but Hans gets your face and you get Hans's face. So they're switching like everything, basically all their facial features. So that's the plan. So yeah. Carlton gets Hans's face and Hans gets Carlton's money. So they're swapping looks for money at this point. So he goes through with the procedure and we get a montage of all kinds of like surgical devices and machines and blood going through tubes and kind of this grotesquely looking setup contraption, very, very primitive looking setup for the procedure they're doing. It's very, very bloody though. That's about the extent of gore we get in this episode, by the way. It's like all these scenes where we get the montage of the surgical procedure going on. After the procedure, Carlton wakes up and we can't see his face. They're saving that reveal for later. And the surgeon tells him, it will take time for your face to take on its permanent features. And then you'll look just like Hans. Carlton asks, where is Hans? And he says, he's around. I'm going to keep him here just in case we need him again. Carlton asks, why would we need him again? You never know, do you? So yeah, you never know. You never know what else you might need from Hans. We're going to keep him around for spare parts is basically what he's saying. So after the procedure the following day, Carlton is taken back home by Fulton. And Fulton, again, right, thrilled to see his, I want to call him master. It's not his master. Thrilled to see his boss or his friend, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
He says, I'm glad that you're all right, sir. I was worried about you. My God, what have they done to your face? And we still can't see his face because it's right. The camera's from the back, and he kind of gets into the car. Fulton gets in front, and they drive off together. But back inside the house, looking at them from the window inside, is Hans. We see him from behind, and he still has his great physique, his legs, his arms, his back is all, he looks great. But then he cocks his head a little bit, turns a little bit to the side, and you can see the silhouette of his face, and you can see that he has an old person's face. So they swapped. Hans not only got Carlton's money, but he also got Carlton's face. Anything you want to add about that moment?
No, I was actually waiting for the next scene because I love that his voice is the same as it is, but just having Hans's face is just so comical to me. It's just like, all right, he's just gonna sound like this whole entire time. He doesn't get his voice either. Just gets it's still Carlton's.
Yeah. The voice box is not something that got the swap.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is the next
face.
scene. We go to Linda's apartment, and Carlton wants to show off his new plastic surgery, and she says, "Oh my God, what happened? I've done it, Linda. I got plastic surgery for you." She says, "Your face is so different, but your body's still so old and decrepit. I couldn't possibly give myself to," and then Carlton finishes her sentence, "an old man." So he's still old, even though he has a new face. Mm-hmm. So this is an interesting part in the episode to me, because eventually when he gets more pieces of, spoiler alert, when he gets more pieces of Hans's body, it is the actor. It is the Hans actor who's doing it. But for this moment, when it's just the head, it's makeup effects. So they're not actually using the Hans actor. They're using just a bunch of makeup to make this old man look like Hans. I don't know. Why do you think they did it this way with makeup? Because eventually they do use Hans. Why do you think they had makeup for this scene?
It probably is also part of it just healing, quote unquote, because then they fix that scene instantly, right? Like they go to the next scene, and eventually it is actually the actor for Hans who takes place. Yeah, so it didn't last the whole entire time.
Yeah, this moment always stuck out to me. Even when I watched this episode years ago, I always think it's weird that they used makeup for this scene, but then immediately after they end up using just the actor. So I wonder if it does have to do with the fact that the makeup hasn't, or not the makeup, but the procedure hasn't settled down yet. He's still kind of inflamed. He looks kind of weird and kind of grotesquely. So yeah, he does look a little weird. So so Linda rejects him still because he's so old, even though his face looks younger. He's so old. And on the drive back home, Fulton, once again, my boy Fulton here, who's really looking out for his boss there, says to Carlton, he says, "Are you sure you're doing the right thing?" He's really concerned for Carlton's well-being. So still, Fulton, I think, is a standout character. I like this guy. So the next scene, we're back to the surgeon's, I'm going to call it the surgeon's lair, this giant laboratory. And, so it was $1 million for the head transplant, basically, right? Mm-hmm. But now he wants to have the torso, basically the chest and the arms he wants to have be transplanted. And that's going to cost him $2 million at this point. And Carlton says, "That's nearly all the money I have." And the surgeon says, "Perhaps next time you'll know better than to grow old." Like it was his fault he grew old. By the way,
it's like that's a choice.
By the way, we kind of skimmed over it, but at the very first introduction of the surgeon is like a squat old, like a German, what could that, like a Swedish man or something like that, right? Like some sort of a European accent to him. He's got the stringy hair in his face constantly. He's got the giant glasses, like the giant Coke bottle glasses. What do you think about the surgeon?
I think it pays homage to Arnold's, homeland, because that's probably Austrian, I think a lot of this episode relates to Arnold in some way, because there's a lot of things that come up like, oh, that is something probably Arnold grew up into when he immigrated here and whatnot, just like, because the following scenes they go to a beach, but I'm pretty sure that's a specific beach that Arnold used to work out at and stuff like that. Like
I was going to talk about that too. Yeah, this old doctor is very cliche Igor-like character as well. It reminds me of kind of a Frankenstein I was expecting his name to be similar to Frankenstein, like Dr. Frankfurt or something like that, right? Like I would expect that, but yeah, they never did. I never got the name from him, but it was very Frankenstein.
Yeah, I looked it up and they never mentioned his name.
Oh, okay, you did look it up.
He's just an infamous surgeon. Yeah.
Okay, the infamous surgeon. Okay, so.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, $2 million for the torso, and Carlton says that's nearly all my money, and the plastic surgeon says perhaps next time you'll know better than to grow old. So Carlton decides to go through with the procedure, and we have another montage of a bunch of bloody surgical equipment with kind of blood going from tubes all over the place. And they're putting down the scalpel and the saw with all kinds of blood and gutsy kind of stuff all over it. And that's that just goes to more of the horror and gore that's in this episode. Not much. So after the procedure, we get a reveal of what happened, right? At this point now, Carlton is being played by the actor who played Hans. But at this point, we see Carlton in he's basically shirtless. He's showing off his nice physique, his chest, his six-pack, his arms, his head, all of it is just looking very, very handsome. And they're using the Hans actor, right? But they're still using Carlton's voice.
It's so funny. I love it.
Right. And so from this very, very young physique man, you hear Carlton's old raspy voice say, "She won't refuse me now." And the surgeon says, "I'm sure she won't, but just in case, you know where you can find me." So surgeon still has more plans, more something up his sleeve. So yeah, the next scene, this is, I think, the scene you're talking about the beach. Yeah, I think this was supposed to be Venice Beach, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
Venice Beach. So it's a long beach, right? But then you have this giant gym area outside with a bunch of, muscle men kind of working out. And there's Carlton, he's doing pull-ups in Hans's body. And then he's doing, working out with lifting weights. And Linda is off to the side and she is just watching with delight. She is just captivated by the beauty of this man. And Linda says, "Your body is just so wonderful." And Carlton says, "Wonderful enough for a swim?" And Linda agrees. So they're going to go for a swim. So at this point, Carlton gets into his bathing suit and that exposes his legs. Gosh darn it. He did everything but the legs. So Linda sees, from the waist up, he looks gorgeous. But then from the waist down, his legs are just so scrawny and old. And she says, "Look at the sagging skin and the veins." And at this point, she's becoming very, very vain. So yeah, she went from, "You're just so old, you remind me of my grandpa, I can't do it," to, "Okay, well, now that you look younger, I'm interested, but this part of your body still looks kind of old." So at this point, she's starting to have a little change, right? She's starting to become a little more vain. And she says, after she complains about his legs, he says, "Won't you ever be satisfied?" And she says, "I know what I want, and you just don't have it." So, right? Is it about his age? Is it about him being close to her grandfather's age, or is it about something else? Right? It might be something else.
He just doesn't have it.
He just doesn't have it. What is it? So this next scene, we're back in the sitting room where the episode first started off, and the Hans/Carlton character is sitting where we met him in the first place. But right, he looks like Hans now. So a much younger man sitting in that same chair where we saw Carlton earlier. And Fulton enters. Fulton enters just like he did before, but he's dressed like in regular clothes. He's not dressed up in his, butler outfit anymore. And he says, "I've closed the house down, sir. I best be on my way. I shall miss you." Carlton says, "I'll miss you too, but with my current financial situation, I can no longer afford my house for you." So Carlton's decided to go through with the surgery and get the rest of his body young, and he can no longer afford Fulton or his house. Do you think this is true? Do you think Fulton's really going to miss him?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like you said, he cared for him. Everything showcases that he did enjoy working for Carlton. So
yeah, it seems like it. It seems like he had a genuine fondness for his boss. So yeah, at this point, it does seem like a friend having to leave. So the next scene, we go back to the surgeon's lair, and this scene, he tells him it's going to cost $1 million per limb, and he asks, "So $2 million?" And he says, "I'm afraid that's $3 million. You're forgetting about the most crucial limb of all, the limb that if you truly wish to satisfy your lover, is the limb that should be replaced most of all. So I wonder if that's what Linda was talking about when she says, you just don't have it.
I don't think so. I think she just saw like the legs and just reminded her of her grandfather again or something like that. You know, it's like you're so old and frail.
Yeah. But I like after the surgeon tells him, right, you should replace that limb that matters the most. At that moment, Carlton looks down into his own lap and you hear a woman screaming out in the distance. And I also like that during this exchange, this entire scene, the surgeon is eating a giant salami. He's like slicing it and it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter as he's, this giant salami he just keeps eating from. That was a funny gag there. So we get another montage of the surgical equipment and a little bit more blood. Then we get the reveal right after the surgery. And it's a full nude shot from behind of Carlton / Hans staring into the mirror. Carlton is just looking over his entire body in the mirror, just admiring his beauty. And when he looks down, he is shocked. And he says, wait till Linda sees this.
He's so happy.
Yeah, he sure is.
He's a pretty good surgeon because when we get the shot of Carlton / Hans's back, it's like no any kind of like surgical markings, I mean, it's just perfectly done. Like that's how good of a surgery is. It's just perfect.
Yeah, that's a good point too. They could have easily put some like stitch marks on the arms or the torso or the neck or something like that to show the different sections that were done. But yeah, it's it's seamless. They did nothing. Yeah, that's a good point. So the next scene, we're back at Linda's apartment and, but it's empty. Linda moved out and the movers are there. The movers are kind of moving things around. The movers tell him that Linda moved to some fancy place uptown. And so he runs back down to his car. He's getting ready to go to Linda's place, but his car's like surrounded by a bunch of like hoodlums. Mm-hmm. And, maybe some carjackers or something like that. He tells them, hey, you're going to give us a ride, fella. And basically he beats them all off single-handedly. He throws one of them completely over the car. So this man is not just looking younger, he like is younger. Like his body, his physique is enough to like toss these men around like rag dolls. So he is ready and able and willing to fight for the love of his life. So he's got to chase down Linda. So the next scene, here we are at the fancy place uptown. He runs to basically like the upstairs, the top story penthouse of this giant building. And that's where Linda is. She's wearing like a fancy silk nightgown. She has diamond earrings, a diamond necklace. She's very, very, and the room is very decked out, very large penthouse of a room. She looks great. She looks stunning. She looks all dressed up and in, fancy outfits. And he says, I finally done it. Marry me. And she says, I can't. I'm already married. You're nice, Carlton, but I needed a man of financial means who can make me comfortable for the rest of my life. A man with enough money so I wouldn't have to worry about being poor. I found my new husband. His name is Hans. So remember, Hans not only got all of Carlton's body parts, he also got all of Carlton's money. So basically, right, we have the actor who played Carlton walking out as Hans. Very, very wealthy man. And with that wealth becomes the ability to hire Fulton. So Fulton comes back as well with 2 glasses of champagne, one for Hans and one for Hans's new wife, Linda. So Hans basically got his Carlton back. He got his best friend back.
Basically.
And that's the twist of the episode, right? Like, she really didn't want a young, good-looking man. She wanted the money. And if only he had just told her how wealthy he was, he could have had her to begin with. But then she would have only been with him for his money. And I don't think that's what she wanted. I don't think that's what he wanted anyway. So kind of an interesting twist because he could have had her. But we know that he could have had her from the beginning. Like, he made an effort to not tell her about his money. So it's kind of like not a full twist, but like maybe 3/4 of a twist.
Still about gold diggers. A back-to-back episode.
Oh, right. Yeah. 2 episodes in a row of gold diggers, right?
Yeah.
Damn it. Demi Moore should have gotten with this guy.
Yeah. She'd have been fine with it.
Oh, darn it. Oh, poor Demi. She got the short end of the stick being with Fat Slob. who killed her.
He killed her, yeah.
She could have been with Hans in his old decrepit body. Do you think like his internal organs are also old? Do you think Hans is going to live for a long time as the old man, and the old man is going to live just for like, you know, a few more months in a young body?
I think so, because like that whole scene when he was fighting off the carjackers, like he technically has his muscle, so I feel like he would also have something internal, if not all the organs, you know, because it's a torso. Like, I mean, it's not just the skin, you know. I don't know. I wasn't the surgeon realistically, but
yeah, maybe all he kept was his brain.
Assume, yeah, I assume maybe all kept was his brain, but everything else was replaceable.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. In that case, Hans might have the short end of the stick then, if he has all the old organs. I don't know.
Well, he's not smart enough to care. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's
Hans
just living
did not seem like he was smart enough to really think that far ahead.
Yeah, he wouldn't think that far ahead.
So that was the twist of the episode. It was an okay twist. I liked it. I liked it enough. It was good. I liked the rest of the episode more, actually. I liked him constantly chasing, getting younger and younger. I like that whole dynamic of him constantly going back to the doctor. And that reminds me of the last episode also, where Demi Moore was constantly going back to the fortune teller. These two episodes are similar in that way, I think. Like, right? Because like in the last episode, Kathy was out doing what she had to do, but then every once in a while she'd have to go back to the fortune teller to, like, you know, be reassured that, you know, she's on the right track. Well, in this case, Carlton is out doing his own thing, but every time he gets to a dead end, he has to go back to the surgeon to get more procedures done and spend more and more money. How much did he spend altogether, by the way? $1 million for the head.
6 million.
6 million?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so $1 million for the head,
3, right?
$2 million for the torso, and then $3 million for the bottom half. So yeah, those $6 million total. Plus, don't forget, Dr. Thorne said, right, a
hefty charge.
It's going to be a hefty charge. So I don't know how much he would have gotten, but probably, you know, another $1 million or maybe a few $100,000. I don't know.
But he sold his. Oh, I guess he sold his house for the procedure. So
he did sell his house. Yeah. So
yeah.
I
guess it's 6 million and some change.
So we're back to the Crypt Keeper, and he says, "Poor Carlton, looks like he blew it, but no pain, no gain." And the Crypt Keeper sitting at the table, and there's a corpse on the table, and we don't know who the corpse is because the top half of the corpse where the head is kind of covered up, obscured by something. But I think it's supposed to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, although he never says it's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, it seems like they were buddies because, you know, the whole thing with Arnold is like he motivated people to work out, and I think that's why the Crypt Keeper was working out in the beginning. Then he hated it.
Yeah,
but I think it's more just about the episode, like, oh, he just has a fresh body, so he can just swap to looking younger. I don't think it would kill Arnold. I think they were friends.
I think what happened was in the opening sequence, Schwarzenegger got one over on the Crypt Keeper, right? He basically told him, "You work out, you miserable corpse. Right? I'll tell the story," right? So basically, Schwarzenegger had the one up. I think what they wanted to have done was, okay, well, Schwarzenegger can have the first laugh, but the last laugh is going to come from the Crypt Keeper. So the Crypt Keeper is going to end up the Crypt Keeper is going to end up killing Schwarzenegger, and then basically the Crypt Keeper gets the last laugh. But you know, these big action stars, they have, you know, very, sometimes their egos aren't very strong, and I think Schwarzenegger might have said, no, you're not going to kill me. So you can have a dead body on the table, and you can make it seem like it's me, but you're not going to call me out by name. You're not going to show my face. So I think it might have been one of those types of situations.
Can't lose in the contract.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't lose. So somewhere along the lines, Schwarzenegger disappeared and he's not in the outro, but there is a corpse on the table in front of the Crypt Keeper, which may or may not be Schwarzenegger. I don't know.
What would you prefer? Would you prefer if that was
it would have
Arnold?
been fun to have a dead Schwarzenegger there just kind of hanging out, like just I think it would have, like I said back in season 1, I think the Crypt Keeper was a little less inclined to poke fun at himself. I think in season 2, here we are with Schwarzenegger. I think Schwarzenegger is at the point where maybe he's not willing to poke that much fun at himself to be the dead one and to have the Crypt Keeper having the last laugh. I think it might have been one of those types of situations. I don't know, though. I don't know. I'm such a big fan of Schwarzenegger. It don't matter. And that's that. That's the Crypt Keeper does get his last laugh and closing credits. What'd you think, Godden? What'd you think of the episode?
I enjoyed it. It's it's a simple episode, and you think about it again, like the gore part was pretty much the surgery. Like nothing really happens. Like no one really dies, and that's actually I'm not sure if that's the first episode where there's no any kind of fatality. Like there's no kill count whatsoever. Because I'm trying to think back. Like, there's always been deaths, but I think this is the first one where there's like no deaths whatsoever.
Oh my God, I think you're right. I think that might be the first one with no death.
No deaths, yeah. No one gets hurt.
Yeah, I think that's the first episode with no death.
Right.
And the twist was good, and not much gore. Not much gore. Yeah, interesting. I didn't pick up on that either. I didn't really think about the fact that there's no deaths in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I like the episode too. I liked it a lot. And like I said, sometimes I have a hard time thinking, okay, is it just because it's a Schwarzenegger episode, or is it just a good episode? I think it's just a good episode. It's just the fact that Schwarzenegger opens it up and it's directed by Schwarzenegger makes good Easter eggs inside the episode. Like you said, the Venice Beach reference, the Austrian doctor reference. Like there are a little bit of Easter eggs in there that you can kind of see Schwarzenegger, in charge of. So a good episode with a good twist, not much gore. And I really do want the gore. So I'm gonna go. So my last episode, I gave a 4, and I gave it a 4 because I feel like that's about as good. That's like top tier for no gore. That's my new stance. That's how I'm going to think of it. So this is a 4. This is a top tier episode. It just has no gore, and the gore is that's what would get it over the edge for me is the gore. So I'm gonna go with a 4 on this episode as well. 4. What are the links of salami?
Oh, the sausage links and hot links. That's funny. Yeah, I agree with that score, honestly, because I was also going to give it a 4. 4 dumbbells, actually, because it's all about, I just thoroughly enjoyed it because, I don't know, the whole gimmick, it's just Hans, but with Carlton's voice, is just so funny. Because, like, you hear it when he's, like, fighting off the carjackers, and he's like, I'm strong. Or he kind of gives off that, he comes up with a statement like that, where he's like, yeah, look at me, I can do it all.
Yeah, he was very triumphant in that moment. Yeah, we were all rooting for Hans in that moment. He went through a lot of work, sacrifice to get his body like in that shape, all for Linda. Damn it, Linda.
Yeah, Linda was the villain. She was the villain this one.
You think so?
Well,
that's what Linda did. She did end up becoming a lot more vain by the end of the episode. So much so that at the end she was willing to marry the man that looked like her grandpa for the money. And not only that, he looks remarkably just like Carlton used to look. Like, how dumb is this woman to not think something's up with this, right? Yeah, that was interesting. Did she know? I wonder if she got the inside scoop on what was going on. Like, because how would she not notice that this looks just like Carlton used to look, and now Carlton looks different? Like, it
doesn't bother her. She has all the money now.
And to be honest with you, it never bothered me until I thought about it. I wonder.
We don't have the gold diggers mindset, so we wouldn't understand.
She's willing to overlook the fact that he looks just like Carlton used to look for the money.
But not just money, yeah.
So, okay. So, yeah, Linda, I don't know if she's a villain, but she's definitely revealed to be a lot more vain than she started out being. And the first time I feel like she had an honest complaint. Maybe her honest complaint is honest. Maybe she really feels that way, but she's willing to turn a blind eye to it as long as there's money involved. So,
yeah, that's probably most likely the case.
So even if Carlton were able to get what he wanted with the money, she wouldn't have been completely happy with him, and it wouldn't have been good enough for him. He needed it to be 100% for him.
Yeah. He's using for the actual love.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So a 4 and a 4 for an average of 4. All right. Well, with that, let's turn our attention to Horrorspondence. I want to remind you all that if you have any comments or questions or concerns about our podcast, please feel free to write away and drop something in the comments. We'll be happy to share your thoughts and opinions on future episodes of the podcast. I wanted to give a couple of shout outs again. Last week I gave some shout outs. This week I want to give some shout outs again. Remember, Creeps of the Crypt podcast. They're at Ghost Crusaders on YouTube. They release their episodes monthly. So if you want to go catch them and see what they have to say about episodes as well, you can check them out on YouTube. Or If you prefer Spotify or other podcast services, there's the Crypt Keepers podcast. It's a bi-monthly podcast, so they release their episodes twice a month. Now, something I didn't mention last week, Creeps of the Crypt is also a YouTube podcast with video, so you can see them while they're talking about the episodes. The Crypt Keepers podcast is audio only, so there's nothing to watch there. You just listen to it. So I didn't mention that last week, but I thought it would be interesting to bring it. I thought it would be, just in case you're a visual type person, the Crypt Keepers podcast is audio only. All right. Hey, you know what? What about us? Godden, where can we be found if somebody was interested in getting in touch with us?
Well, they can find us on YouTube and Spotify and our newly social media, Twitter, or X, I guess that's what it's called. But Twitter, at Crypteakers, where we will post updates on any latest events or any of the new episodes we just had finished recording. And yeah, honestly, if anyone wants to keep up with anything we have planned, they should be able to notice any kind of updates there. All
right. Thank you for taking care of our Twitter, by the way, Godden. I don't have a Twitter. I've never had a Twitter, so I don't even know how to tweet. I'm very glad, Godden. I'm very thankful for you taking charge on that. So thank you for that. And if you want to get a hold of us, or if you want more of Godden and I, we can also be found outside of this podcast. So I have a couple of channels, Too Bad About Kenny and Too Bad About Kenny. One with the TOO Bad About Kenny and one with the number 2 Bad About Kenny, where one of them I review movies and books and whatnots, mostly horror movies, but other movies too. And then one of them I stream video games. So hit me up on either one of those to see what I'm up to. And Godden, how about you?
For me, they can find me streaming video games at Twitch/UAPPO and then number 6.
Which is Godden upside down.
It is Godden upside down.
I like that, by the way. I really like that about your name. When I first saw your name, it was like, because when you read it, it was like Uapo or something like that, or
yeah, it just reads something silly.
It's like 6 Uapo. I was like, this is a weird name. Then you told me it was Godden upside down, and now I can't unsee it. So whenever I see your name,
like once you know, it's like, yeah, But first glance, it is a weird name to have.
Yeah. All right. And before we go, I want to remind you one more time, we are a new podcast and we would love your review. So if you want to leave a review for us, I hear this can go a long way to help out new podcasts. And with that, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you so much for watching Tales from the Crypt and then listening to us blab on about it. We appreciate you. Thanks a lot. Have a good week. We'll see you next episode when we talk about season 2, episode 3, Cutting Cards. That'll be next week. All right, take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Well, how was that for a scream, boys and ghouls?
There it is, Godden. We're done. How about that?